Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first Women in Sectional Title webinar for 2023. I'm so excited that we've got the months ahead to share, learn, and grow together. Our WiST platform provides us with a way for women to come together to participate in an open forum, listening to topics on sectional title law and other issues, as well as looking forward to other softer issues. I'm especially looking forward to next month's talk on burnout in the workplace. It is with some trepidation that we begin the year. The challenges facing our schemes are not just the normal daily issues, but now include inordinate hours of load shedding and tough socio-economic circumstances. Managing agents and trustees will definitely need to step up to the plate and to engage with creative opportunities to maximize positive energy and momentum within their complex. One of our great positives at Women in Sectional Title would be our wonderful sponsors. Thank you to ZFIN, CIA, Meeting Pal, TKF Octagon, Sectional Title Solutions, and We Connect You. Thank you. Without you guys, we really wouldn't be able to be where we are and to be getting the kind of traction and the numbers that we are getting. So today we're talking about how to improve AGM attendance in 2023. And I'd really like to leave some time at the end of this webinar to be able to get your views, because so many of our members and so many of our attendees on Women in Sectional Title are actually portfolio managers at managing agencies. So you're really in the cut and thrust of the sectional title industry at meetings, and I'm hoping that you've also got some really good ideas to share with us today. So low attendance at body corporate meetings is an all too common complaint by managing agents. It doesn't really help. You've also got you can only hold 2 proxies, so your quorums are really badly affected and you generally land up postponing meetings with no quorums to the next week. In fact, many of my managing agents just put that postponement date of a week later in their diaries anyway. It's true that a lot of meetings are not really handled that well, creating exhaustion and frustration for people who go to the meetings. But definitely a meeting between a group of owners, whether it's in person or virtually, it will always present and produce better ideas and plans, and it's a place to make decisions. It also helps individual owners understand the collective aim of the scheme and the way that they can positively contribute to increase the asset values of their complex. So today, what I'd like to do is start by going over basic concepts, quorums, proxies, notice requirements, voting resolutions. We're also going to lay out the golden rules for chair people to remember during a meeting, and hopefully give you our ideas on how to improve attendance right at the very end. It's always helpful for all of you and for me as well to just go over a couple of important things. I'm also going to bring in a couple of things that people might not be 100% aware of. There's some tricky sections, tricky places in the Act, particularly when it comes to special resolutions and unanimous resolutions, that we need to look at as well. So we're talking about institutional memory, and by way of introduction, we can really say that decisions of the body corporate are taken by way of resolution. You know that, either by trustee resolution or by resolution of the members of the body corporate. These resolutions are either passed as at the general meeting or, of course, by trustees. The resolutions are kept in a minute book to allow for future reference, irrespective of the change in membership over the years. And this is really a concept that we can just build our foundation on when it comes to meetings of perpetual succession. So perpetual succession means that every single decision that the body corporate has taken as the years go by is recorded. We don't have a situation where, minute books are really thrown out. I think it's really important that the minute books contain the institutional history and memory of the body corporate, and by all the members at the general meeting, when they do take a decision, it goes into the minute book. And for this reason, the management rules actually stipulate that that minute book must be kept for the entire period that that scheme exists. So your body corporate's a legal person, it's a juristic person, it's capable of being sued, and it just goes on in perpetuity, and thus perpetual succession. All right, we're talking about now, and what I want to talk about first is also, let's just go over things like the notice requirements for meetings, and the type of meeting that we're looking at. So I'm going to talk about the first general meeting, which is the inaugural meeting, the annual general meeting, a special general meeting, and trustees meetings. So let's first discuss the notice period. So the first general meeting, that inaugural meeting, is at least 14 days written notice. The annual general meeting would also be at least 14 days notice, but just be aware there that if there's a special or unanimous resolution that does need to be taken at that meeting, then you would either need a special resolution, a 30 days notice if you're taking a special or unanimous resolution. A special general meeting, which is basically, you know, just a meeting that you need to, where you need to discuss something, where something is raised, or even where it's been called by more than 25% of owners who want to push the trustees to call a meeting. That meeting is also determined by the kind of resolution to be passed. So ordinary is 14 days notice, special or unanimous resolution is your 30 days notice. And then of course, your trustees meeting, it says in the management rules, not less than 7 days notice, and that's actually written notice. Okay, so now the manner of notice, this always causes, is some cause for concern. And sometimes, you know, when you don't see this for a long time, you kind of forget, and you even get to the point where you think, oh, you think people can just send emails now, you can have virtual meetings, so I'm sure it's all fine. But I had a chat with Corinne Blaze on the weekend. We had in our final stages of our book. And she was saying in the community scheme, she's an adjudicator at the community schemes ombud service. And she was saying that you can't believe how many adjudications relate to this notice issue. So let's have a look. Our first general meeting, our annual general meeting, and the special general meeting all need to be, the notice needs to be given by hand and by registered post. A lot of people say by hand or by registered post. It's by hand and by registered post, or if there's a domicilium address that you've been advised or that you've given a notice of, then you can send by registered post to a domicilium address where you've been given notice of a change of the domicilium address. Then you can also email, but it's only once you've complied with the by hand and by registered post proviso. So that's something just to consider as well. Right, when we go into quorums, so prescribed management rule 19 provides that a general meeting may not proceed unless a quorum is present or met. In other words, there's representation, the correct number of proxies who are representing people. So a lot of people have said to me, and it's come up actually in the one case, the Blyde versus River Walk Body Corporate Homeowners Association. It was a CSOS adjudication. It was an order. So what happens when a quorum is present at the beginning of a meeting, but then people walk out of that meeting in, you know, as they are prone to do when they don't agree with what's going on. And all of a sudden you lose your quorum. If you count up and you count those people who've left and you lose the quorum, can business still be transacted? And we don't think that it can be, because you need to be present or represented when business is transacted in terms of that management rule. And in this Blyde River case, what happened was they had the requisite quorum, people left, and then they took a resolution on amendment of rules, amendment of conduct rules for short-term letting. in the scheme, and a big mistake was made there because they didn't get enough, and basically that's why the guys lost case in that particular case. We're not going to go into it. So where a scheme has less than 4 primary sections or members, a quorum is met when members who are entitled to vote are present and hold 2/3 of the total votes of members in value. For any other scheme, in other words, 4 or more, a quorum is met when members who are present hold 1/3, 33.3% of the total votes of members in value. So it's pretty important that we get those quorums formed. Prescribed Management Rule 13 provides that at a trustee meeting, the quorum is met when 50% of the trustees by number are present. If the number falls below the above requirement, then the remaining trustees may proceed only to appoint trustees to make the quorum or to call a general meeting, but then they need to get a consent after anything's decided. All special general meetings require quorum in value of 33% unless they are less than 4 units. 33 should be 33.3 actually. But I think that's important. Also, I'd like to just mention, and these are practical things again, that developers who own sections do not form part of calculating that quorum, and neither do sections registered in the name of the body corporate. So in my experience, I've got more and more of my body corporates who are actually buying units in schemes where they're distressed sales and that type of thing. So if the body corporate owns, it's registered in the body corporate name, that would not form part of a quorum. Okay, voting and resolutions. When it said that a quorum is calculated on the value held, this refers to the term participation quotas of value, or sometimes it's also called a poll vote. In other words, you've got a show of hands votes and you've got a value vote, PQ or poll voting. Show of hands has sort of almost gone out of the window because this value vote is really what we're using now in sectional title. And I think there are certain apps that have also been recommended to work out and to calculate quickly what the PQ vote is as people are walking in. But we know PQ, let's just go over it, is the total floor area of a section expressed as a percentage of the total floor area of all the sections in the scheme. All right, so that's all sort of quite legal, but I love the Nachi example. The Nachi example of PQ is that you've got the actual Nachi inside the skin, and each segment of that Nachi is a section. So if you take off one segment, which is your section, and you work out the square meterage, you divide it by all those segments, which are other people's sections, then you would get your participation quota quite easily. The skin of the Nachi is the common property. So common property has got nothing to do with calculating PQ. It's only your sections. Okay. So let's start with ordinary resolutions as well. If proposed to pass an ordinary resolution at a meeting, a simple majority of votes by PQ is required to pass the resolution. 14 days written notice is required for an ordinary resolution, or 7 days written notice if the trustees deem a matter of important nature. So if it's an urgent matter and you really, really need to get that ordinary resolution vote, you should be able to do that in 7 days. A couple of examples, I suppose, of an ordinary resolution. Installing separate meters would be an ordinary resolution. Remunerating trustees who are not owners would be an ordinary resolution. Appointing a managing agent could be an ordinary resolution, although trustees can also appoint managing agents. A little sort of sparkly tip or advice, also you might not know about it, in the Act and the rules, actually, we talk about an ordinary resolution where you've got an exclusive use area. And it says, if you'd like to build onto that exclusive use area, improve the exclusive use area, or you want to extend the floor area of that exclusive use area. So this would encompass a balcony or enclosed balcony. You can ask the body corporate for an ordinary resolution on this, and this is interesting, but only if the trustees are sure that it doesn't, interfere with any other legislation or act. And you can place conditions on that. So you can also say, well, as long as it doesn't interfere with the integrity of the building. So that's quite a sneaky little provision that they put into the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act regulations. Okay. All right, then the special resolutions, we know that to pass a special resolution, an example of a special resolution is the amendment of a conduct rule. You need 75% of members calculated in value and number and forming a quorum, and that's required. So 30 days notice must be given. And the little sparkly tip I've got for special resolutions here, there's also a management rule which says you've got to be a bit careful, because if you go to your meeting and that special resolution is taken, you get a quorum, all very well and good, but you've only got 50% of the votes in value, or less than 50%, so 49 and below percent of that number in value. You can't actually pass that special resolution. You must wait for 7 days, because within that 7-day period, 25% of the value, owners holding the value, can call for a reconsideration of that resolution. So don't get too excited if you get a special resolution when you've had very little PQ representation being there. If you want to pass a unanimous resolution, we know that a quorum in value of 80% of the members must be present in person or by proxy. 30 days written notice must be given with that as well. And again, here's also something that's a little bit tricky. And it says that if in a unanimous resolution unfairly and adversely affects any owner, the resolution is not effective unless that member consents in writing within 7 days of the date of that resolution. So let's take an example just to indicate what this means. You've got, in one of the complexes in Benmore, we had the body corporate wanted to put in a swimming pool. And you need a unanimous resolution because it's not reasonably necessary to have a swimming pool. It falls under the old luxurious improvements under the old Act. And they decide, okay, so they want to pass a unanimous resolution, and they do. They get the 80% quorum. The only thing is one person who didn't attend that meeting lives right next to the pool, and will adversely affect her because they're children and there's noise and all of that. So that person actually has to give consent in writing, and it's almost incumbent upon the body corporate to go and get that consent in writing within 7 days from date of resolution. Otherwise, that resolution won't stand. You will be able to have that resolution set aside. So a lot of people don't know about it. The people who do know about it are, in my view, in my experience here at the office, using that to set things aside. Just wanted to go into the chats. Aubrey likes the Nachi example. Thanks, Aubrey. That's great. And how's it, Annette? I see you've apologized for being late. That's okay. Let's just have a look. What are the requirements if short notice is given for special resolutions? As always somewhat tricky with registered mail, etc. Well, I think it is tricky, because I think unless that resolution is incredibly urgent, and unless you can prove that the body corporate is going to fall down without this resolution being taken, I think there might be a problem. Although the Act will also tell you that inadvertent omission the proper notice will not render anything void or any resolutions taken that are void. Michelle, hi Michelle, if you need to review the conduct rules completely due to the changes in the Act, which most sectional title complexes need to do. Can one use round robin via email to consider the new rules and suggest changes, allow for comments or suggest for a 2-week period, and then another 2 weeks after the changes are made? I don't think there should be any problem with that, as long as you've got evidence at the end of the day that you have given notice to everybody that it's been sent, that they've been given the new rules to consider. And I think the longer you wait, the better. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay. Right, let's carry on. So these are 11 golden rules for the chairperson to remember when presiding over meetings. And I think it's really important. This is contained in Management Rule 18.3 of the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act. Okay, so firstly, make decisions on points of procedure. That's, again, important. If there's a fight, take a robust stand. Settle disputes by giving rulings on points of order. Again, you've got to be quite single-minded and determined as a chairperson to take control of that meeting. Surrender the chair to a temporary person in the debate of any item of business, if there's a necessity to do so. Mustn't influence a member's views, and you mustn't disclose in advance how you intend to vote on any item of business. You must maintain order, regulate orderly expression of views, guidance of meetings. You must ensure that all motions proposed are within the scope of notice and powers of meeting. You must ensure the scheme's rules, minute books are available at the meeting. All those things that are required in your index in terms of the management rules should be there. You must act fairly, impartially, and courteously. Well, that could certainly render some rules for chair people who don't stick to that invalid. I've been to many meetings where the chair people do not act fairly, impartially, and certainly not courteously. And those are chair people that you can get rid of. By the way, how do you get rid of a chairperson? We've got trustees who often say, look, we like our little band, but this chairperson has just, gotten ahead of himself and thinks he's too big for his boots. So how do we get rid of the chairperson? Do you need to go to a meeting and get an ordinary resolution to get rid of a chairperson? Well, I think the first thing that one has to do is you would have to, as trustees, the trustees themselves can remove a chairperson. So you can have a meeting and say, look, we're removing you as a chairperson. But that doesn't render him removed as a trustee. He would just then be demoted to the position of a trustee. And then you'd have to go to a meeting so that you would be able to get that ordinary resolution to remove him as a trustee. Okay. Ensure members express their views without disturbance. Adjourn meeting when it's not able to continue with business. So there's come a time if a meeting becomes unruly and unmanageable, where a meeting just can't go ahead. Don't be scared to stop a meeting like that, because you don't need to tolerate that kind of thing. Right, let's just see where we are. Strategies to ensure an efficient and productive meeting. So I think that's really why many of you have actually come onto this webinar, because meetings can be really, as we said, low attendance. So I think that there's a need to take obstacles right out of the way. You need to, whatever is going to be difficult, you need to take it out of the way. So let's talk about first the time of the meeting, the venue of the meeting, the atmosphere of the meeting. The time of the meeting, obviously, it has to be at a time when people are not working. We've had people who make meetings on Jewish holidays, trustees, I think maybe because they want to exclude the people who do take their Jewish holidays. but you've got to be fair. You've got to be fair. You've got to look at public holidays, and that's across the board on all religions, all, cultures, all groups. What will suit everybody at what time? Also, you can't make meetings too late in the evenings. That's not reasonable. The venue is also important. If it's not a virtual meeting, the venue does play a role. Often the venue is at the complex, at the clubhouse, or in somebody's larger area, maybe on the balcony and whatever. That venue, I know one of my bodies corporate have a meeting at a hotel opposite their body corporate, and they just love it. They have very high attendance because then afterwards everyone socializes and chats and that kind of thing. Don't have a venue where it's too cold or too hot or too squashed or anything like that. That will put people off. And the atmosphere, obviously light and congenial. I've been to meetings at actually very wealthy homeowners associations and bodies corporate, where you would think that the people who live there would be a little bit happier because they've got beautiful sections and beautiful common areas, and yet they were all miseries. Meeting must be punctual. Okay, that actually goes without saying. But again, I've attended meetings where the portfolio managers are faffing around before the meeting, and as the meeting's supposed to start, they're looking through their papers and talking to other people, and then people will say, oh, we just have to wait for so-and-so, and we have to wait for so-and-so. That's actually not on. If you say 6:30, then the meeting must start at 6:30. Also, you should definitely benchmark your time against each item on your agenda so that you don't lose momentum. So if you've got 10 minutes for this, 15 minutes for that. Interestingly, when I went to Sydney, my colleague Francesca Andrioni was saying that they keep their meetings to between an hour and an hour and a half. That includes the AGM. Over and above that, you're not moving fast enough. So they become pace, tone, confidence. I think that's, again, pace has a lot to do with preparation. So if you've prepared the speakers beforehand and they know what to say, they know what to how you want to deal with things, I think that adds also to the pace. Don't ramble, goes without saying. And I think, again, if people are rambling on and on, you need to cut them off in an assertive but kind way. You cannot have one person dominating a meeting. And that is definitely what again, in my experience, I found there's always that one person who wants his stuff heard. It's too specific to a meeting, particularly an annual general meeting. Your tone confident tone, don't be timid. People will walk all over you if you're a timid managing agent or portfolio manager. They're like, owners can sometimes be like sharks, If they smell blood, then they'll go for you. So be confident. Confidence is really a very, very big asset to have. Virtual meetings are definitely a winner. Over these last tough years, speaking to all my managing agent clients, they love the virtual meetings because virtual meetings, you don't have to travel. You've got happy portfolio managers who may be there with their families, that don't need to be rushing around, that can have supper and then deal with their meeting. I think virtual meetings, also punctuality is big because you just, everybody's always punctual for a virtual meeting. That's great. I love that. And yeah, I think if people get too carried away, you can always mute people. But that you didn't hear me say that. That's obviously your decision. But sure, can help a lot. Yeah. This is something that I picked up in a couple of articles within Singapore. Zoom in an expert. So if there's some controversy going on in your complex about a certain issue, why don't you zoom in somebody? Like, if it's an insurance issue, you zoom in an expert on insurance. If it's a legal issue, you can zoom somebody for like a 10 to 15 minute little talk. Nothing major. I mean, you want to get out of there, I understand that. But just to clarify something. And it also shows you prepared well and you've got some extra added value within your meeting. I think that's that's the bomb. I really do. And I think people would be willing to help to do that, especially people who are experts in the industry. They don't want to travel to your meetings, but they can be zoomed in. I remember on one of my consultations with a client, we were consulting on Zoom, and I had organized to Zoom in an expert on insurance. And all of a sudden there he popped up and he was chatting, and then another lady on waterproofing popped up, and at the end everybody was quite impressed. They thought, oh, this is a good meeting. Okay, snacks. I mean, most of you might be rolling your eyes to say, listen, organizing a meeting is hard enough. Now I must organize snacks. But, it does work. I think that's more likely at trustees meetings. And if you've got very big buildings, obviously it's not workable, but people do like food, and it is a little bit of a puller. So try to do that if you can. Notices of meeting should be visible and in color. So in many jurisdictions that we've looked at on this particular issue, they put big colorful notices on notice boards, and those notice boards would be at the lobbies, entrance, by the lifts, in the lifts, especially important meetings. And also something they do again in Singapore is they pop a note on the door handle or under the door for critical issues. So if they really, really want to get people to come because they're worried about certain issues, that's the way to go in your smaller complexes. It's a marketing opportunity for managing agents as well to use this to sort of distinguish yourself from other agents. And this is really something quite important. And that speaks to a note on, after the meeting, sending a note of appreciation, popping a note of appreciation through to people, because you don't realize the effect that has on owners. And again, it's really a very clever marketing strategy to send a notice to all those emails or all those SMSs or those cell phone numbers to say, thanks so much. It makes such a huge difference for you to attend our meetings. Okay, let's just go to, wait, it's not finished here. Lastly, send reminders before the meetings. Reminders are key. As soon as you get a little thing saying it's your AGM tonight, don't make it a generic, boring, it's the AGM of, make it personal. We look forward to seeing you. Come through to chat to us. We're looking forward to discussing a couple of matters, including XYZ. Be personable. I think that's the key to really cleansing things. Okay, so let's see here what I've got here. What if people, let me just go up here, sorry. The amended rules were approved at the AGM, and this is who's asking me this here. Can't really see. The amended rules were approved at the AGM. When we registered it with CSAS did not accept it, and the required amendments or changes. Should we then again have to meet to approve the amended rules as requested by CSAS? Well, there I think your round robin would work better. I mean, if you want the first prize, yes, get the meeting recalled. You might not get a quorum, and then you just postpone it and get it okayed at the next week.
Hi, everyone. So I thought while you finish the meeting, please unmute yourselves and ask any questions. Just to mention, one of the tips that we do for some of the bigger meetings is we have a lucky draw, and that makes sure that people actually stay from the beginning of the meeting to the end, because otherwise halfway through you'll notice some people just get bored and they leave, especially in the bigger schemes. So that helps quite a bit. We have, say, a bottle of bells and a big box of chocolates, and then only those people who are there, we have a lucky draw, a unit number takes out of a hat and they get that. So that's one way to make sure they stay to the end. Did anyone have questions?
Hi, I have a comment. What I do, I've got a complex of 62 units, and I actually, before the notice goes out, I actually 2 months prior to that, I go around to everyone's houses, and then 2 weeks before the meeting, the same thing, and then follow up with SMSs or WhatsApps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's excellent. Anyone else? Any questions? Somebody mentioned, can you allow owners in arrears to attend meetings? So remember, obviously, if there's a judgment against them, a court order or CSOS order, then they obviously may not vote. But they can vote if it's a special or unanimous resolution. It's just not for general resolutions. Anyone else? You've still got 15 minutes.
Serena?
Yes.
Michelle asked a question, and I'm not sure if this was answered. What if people don't want to hold a virtual meeting and also don't attend physical meetings?
That's a difficult one. We also in that situation now where, most of the people, trustees especially, they want the Zoom meetings to take place because it does allow other people that don't stay on the premises or near to join the meeting. So we normally get a quorum if it's online. But a lot of other people want the physical meeting. They say COVID is over now and we want our physical meeting back. I think it's up to the trustees to determine the manner in which they're going to hold the meeting. And so we basically ask the trustees to take a resolution, decide the manner of the meeting, and we go with that.
Sorry, just something else on that. The biggest problem is, look, I only have 30% of the people here are tenants. So generally the owners will allow the tenants to stand in for them. But the issue is because each owner can only hold 2 additional proxies, it becomes a problem, because even although you can encourage people and coerce them via prizes and all kinds of ways, generally you only have about, I'd say, 35% of people that are interested. The rest will go as long as your numbers of your outstanding debt looks good, and I drive the debt aggressively, then they really don't care. Then you can literally do what you want, which is scary. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Caroline.
Hi, Serena. Just 2 things with regards to notice. If the owners have requested that their primary service address for notices is an email address, does the notice still need to be sent via registered mail? And if so, would that then automatically be their registered section in their name at that specific complex? That's the first question. And then the second question, that registered mail notice, does that have to have been received from the recipient prior to the required 14, 30 or 7 days, depending on the required meeting days, or just during the period, or would it have to have been posted prior to the required days, the days that were required? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so my understanding is for registered mail or normal mail, the date that is on the registered letter needs to be within that required notice period. So if it's 30 days, it should be 30 days. It has to be 30 days, not 29 days. It doesn't matter if that box has been closed because they haven't updated their box address. I don't know what it's like there, but here in KZN, half the post office is closed. The one in Musgrave, which is, you know, we normally use, that was actually locked up by the sheriff of the court for non-payment of rent. So post offices everywhere the postal system doesn't work. So I'm saying what we do. I'm not saying that that's a legal thing to do, but in terms of notices, we at every AGM we say, does everyone agree that there's unanimous resolution, and we take that notices are going to be sent via email only? Everyone agrees. Look, we haven't had anybody take us to CSOS based on that. We never post because the postal system doesn't work. We don't register post because people don't collect it. And it's very expensive for the body corporate. So, but to answer your question, if you want to go by the letter of the law, yes, that has to be sent within that notice period.
Thank you, Serena. And then also, if an owner has requested that their primary residence service address is email, does the email and registered need to be sent?
I believe so for the registered, for special resolutions. I believe that's right. But like I said, we only email.
And for ordinary and trustees meetings, ordinary resolutions and trustees meetings, only email if they agree to that?
Only email. No,
Okay.
yeah, everyone just emails. But you know, obviously this is not my meeting. I'm just on the WiST steering committee. But I'm just saying what we do. But if you think you're going to be challenged, and there's always one person in the building, always one in every building, at least one. If you believe that you're going to be challenged, then rather do it exactly like Marina said that you should.
Okay, thank you, Serena.
Does anyone else have any other tips or questions, or otherwise we can close the meeting?
Serena, there was one more question on the chat box.
Huh?
Do we exclude owners in arrears that's been in arrears for some time?
Oh yeah, I did mention that. Obviously, only if they've fallen into arrears and you have a judgment against them, or it must be a court order or a CSOS order, then obviously they can't vote for an ordinary resolution. But they can still vote, even with that judgment, for special and unanimous resolutions.
Sorry, there was just one question from Bonolo. She wanted to know whether trustees could be excluded from paying levies and if this was allowable.
I don't believe so. You know, the levy contributions on owners is in the Sectional Title Scheme Management Act, and I don't believe that it's something that you can change. And my thought for that is rather take the special resolution to remunerate trustees. So you have a special general meeting to remunerate the trustees and make it similar to the amount that they would pay in levies. But I don't believe that that any resolution would be able to set that off, just to allow them not to pay levies now. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it was Benolo's question. I just saw it in the chat box, but thank you. Sorry, I'd like to ask something that's slightly off topic. When it comes to adjudication orders made by CSOS, I have a specific case in my complex where the there wasn't the first meeting, the conciliation didn't take place. It went straight to adjudication. The details were emailed. The commissioner did not take into consideration the factors presented by the body corporate, made a resolution. We're now taking it to the High Court, which we can only order, or at least argue on a point of law of what he did wrong in law, but we can't even bring into the fact that he did not consider any of the material facts submitted. Now, that is obviously an issue and an error in the CSOS domain, but because you cannot, there's no recourse. We have to have some kind of mechanism of looking at when it goes wrong, and it can go wrong. What can you do besides spending 75K to go to the High Court?
Yeah, agreed. I do know that the CSOS actually at the last NAMA Indaba, they did say that they were amending their rules, or their, I think it was the Act, part of the CSOS Act, to allow for a review process within CSOS themselves, which then would allow, if you don't agree with anything, you would be able to take it on review to somebody in CSOS and not have to go to the High Court. That obviously hasn't happened yet, those changes to the legislation, but that is on the cards. So we hope within the next year at least, there will be something like that. Yeah, that's what we were told at the conference. So it's good news.
Can I ask some question again related to CSOS?
Yes.
Yes, you get the adjudication order and the person is not living in the building. It's a tenant that is living there. And even though the tenant is paying rent, the owner doesn't pay his levies or even the utilities, you know. Yeah. One case is now that the person has actually asked the tenant to pay the utilities, and it just begs the rent that is supposed to be paying for the levies. Yeah. And one thing I'm asking is, now you get this adjudication order, which if it is not executed, you need to take it to the clerk of the court. And now the person is not living there. How does the person get followed or maybe get his belongings attached?
I don't think CSOS will attach the belongings, but what they will do is obviously, I think the CSOS adjudication would have said that the rent must be paid to the body corporate and not to the landlord. Is that correct?
There was nothing about the rent. Maybe when we take it, then, you know, because they say if the person continues not paying, we take it to the clerk of the court, and the clerk of the court sends it to the sheriff. So maybe I'm going to ask a question from CSOS if we can actually take the rent, because the person was having an agent first, and the agent was not paying, and I think they were in cahoots, because when now the agent saw that CSOS is closing on them, he skipped ship and said the owner is responsible, but the owner keeps on not paying, only the utilities that are paid by the tenant, and his levies have gone up to around 30,000.
So obviously CSOS won't touch the case if it's already gone legal. But if you've got an adjudication order and then you've gone to the court for that order, then that's got to follow through that legal process from there.
No, we need to go back to CSOS to make the attachment order. But you know what they say, if the adjudication is not executed properly by the owner, so we need to go and get the execution order, which we take. Maybe in applying for that, we can maybe ask if then we can take the rent and pay it directly.
Yeah, that's I think that's worth dropping an email to you know, to an attorney about that. I'm not an attorney, I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Was there anything else? It's only a pleasure. Tony?
Yeah, if I can come in on Reverend Chepo's matter, I've had a similar case. The CSOS won't grant an order on attachment. They only grant the order on the payment of the rental and utilities to the body corporate. If the tenant in occupation fails to comply with that order, which needs to be made an order of the court first, then it's a case where either the body corporate pursues the tenant under a civil matter, or they go back to the owner on a legal matter. So yeah, it's probably it's a costly exercise, but those are the parts. CSOS won't touch attachments. That's not in the jurisdiction.
Yeah, thank you. Was there anything else? I think we're almost at 12 o'clock. I don't see anything else on here. Right, shall we end the meeting?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for staying on. Sorry if I don't have all the answers, but yes, if you have any questions, please drop Marina a line. And also Marina, when we'll have it at the recording of that.